The sun was setting over Sunny Meadows retirement home, casting a warm glow over the manicured lawns and winding garden paths. To most, it was a picture of serene tranquility, a sanctuary for those in the twilight of their lives. But for Ben Taylor, it was a prison sentence, a mind-numbing purgatory where excitement went to die. As he trudged up the flagstone path toward the imposing double doors, Ben's shoulders sagged under the weight of his misery. His fingers twitched with the familiar urge to bury his nose in his phone and escape into the digital realm. But his mother's stern warning still rang in his ears. "Ben, I don't want to see that phone out once while we're visiting Grandma Rose," she had chided, fixing him with a pointed look. "You know how she feels about those blasted contraptions. Just try to engage for an hour or two, okay?" Ben heaved a sigh, resigning himself to another torturous afternoon of half-hearted bingo games and forced conversation. Little did he know that this seemingly mundane visit would soon take an unexpected turn, one that would challenge him in ways he never could have imagined, and forge an unlikely bond that would change his life forever. Chapter 1. A Reluctant Visitor. The lobby of Sunny Meadows was a veritable kaleidoscope of floral prints and pastel hues, a jarring assault on Ben's senses after the muted tones of the world outside. He wrinkled his nose in distaste, silently cursing his parents for subjecting him to such outdated decor. "Ben, darling!" a familiar voice called out, cutting through the low hum of conversation that filled the room. "Over here!" Across the lobby, a petite woman with a shock of silver curls waved enthusiastically, her face split into a broad grin. Ben's grandmother, Rose Hutchins, was a force of nature, a whirlwind of energy and enthusiasm that seemed to defy the laws of aging. "Hey, Grandma," Ben mumbled, shuffling over to press a dutiful kiss to her weathered cheek. "How's it going?" "Oh, you know me, dear. Living my best life," Grandma Rose exclaimed, looping her arm through his and giving it a playful squeeze. "Now come along. The bingo game is about to start, and I've got a lucky feeling about today." Ben suppressed a groan, allowing himself to be steered towards the recreation room. The very thought of sitting through another mind-numbing round of bingo was enough to make his eyes glaze over. He cast a longing glance at his phone, securely tucked away in his pocket, before resigning himself to his fate. The recreation room was a hive of activity, with rows of folding chairs arranged in neat lines, and a handful of staff members bustling about, setting up the bingo equipment. Ben slumped into a chair beside his grandmother, already feeling his attention beginning to wander. As the game got underway, Grandma Rose leaned in close, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "You know, I've never been much of a bingo fan," she whispered conspiratorially. Ben blinked, startled by her admission. "Then why do you always insist on playing?" he asked, his brow furrowing in confusion. Grandma Rose waved a dismissive hand, her expression one of childlike glee. "Oh, bingo is just a cover, my dear. The real fun happens elsewhere." Ben's interest was piqued despite himself. "What do you mean?" he asked, leaning in closer. Grandma Rose's eyes darted back and forth, as if checking to ensure they weren't being overheard. "Have you ever heard of the Secret Garden?" she murmured, her voice low and hushed. Ben shook his head, his confusion mounting. "Secret Garden? Like the book?" Grandma Rose chuckled, her eyes sparkling with delight. "Not quite, dear. You see, legend has it that somewhere within the walls of this very retirement home there lies a hidden greenhouse, a verdant oasis filled with the most beautiful and exotic plants you've ever laid eyes on." Ben's eyebrows shot up, his interest piqued despite himself. "A secret greenhouse. Here." Grandma Rose nodded eagerly. "They say it was built decades ago by one of the founders, a true horticulturist at heart, but over the years its existence became a closely guarded secret, known only to a select few. Until now, that is." She reached into the folds of her cardigan, producing a crumpled piece of paper. "I've been collecting clues, you see, little breadcrumbs left behind by those in the know, and I think I'm finally close to unravelling the mystery." Ben's eyes widened as he studied the paper, his gaze roving over the cryptic scribbles and hastily sketched diagrams. "Grandma, what is all this?" Grandma Rose leaned back in her chair, a mischievous grin playing on her lips. "Why, it's the key to unlocking the greatest adventure this retirement home has ever seen, my dear. So what do you say? Are you ready to embark on a journey like no other? Chapter 2. A Formidable Foe. Ben's head was spinning as he tried to make sense of his grandmother's wild claims. A secret garden, hidden away within the walls of Sunny Meadows. It sounded like something straight out of a storybook, a fanciful tale too outrageous to be true. And yet, there was something about Grandma Rose's infectious enthusiasm that made him pause. She had always been a bit eccentric, to put it mildly, but there was a glint in her eye that suggested she might be onto something. Before he could respond, however, a stern voice cut through the din of the recreation room, sending a hush rippling through the assembled residents. "Rose Hutchins!" the voice barked, laced with equal parts exasperation and authority. "What sort of mischief are you up to this time?" Ben turned to see a formidable woman striding toward them, her starched white uniform and pinched expression lending her an air of severe disapproval. This, he knew, was Miss Peabody, the head nurse at Sunny Meadows, and the scourge of anyone daring enough to step out of line. Grandma Rose, however, seemed utterly unfazed by the imposing figure looming over them. "Why, Agatha, darling," she exclaimed, her face splitting into a broad grin. "Fancy seeing you here. Care to join us for a rousing game of bingo?" Miss Peabody's eyes narrowed, her lips pursing into a thin line. "Don't play coy with me, Rose. I saw you passing that piece of paper to your grandson. What's going on?" Grandma Rose waved a dismissive hand, her expression one of innocent bemusement. "Oh, this old thing? Just a shopping list, dear. Nothing to worry your pretty little head over." Ben shifted uncomfortably in his seat, acutely aware of Miss Peabody's steely gaze boring into him. He had a sinking feeling that his grandmother's ruse wasn't fooling anyone. Sure enough, Miss Peabody's hand shot out, snatching the crumpled paper from Grandma Rose's grasp. Her eyes scanned the cryptic scribbles, her frown deepening with each passing second. "This is no shopping list," she snapped, her voice laced with frustration. "This looks like some sort of code or set of clues. What are you two up to?" Grandma Rose opened her mouth to respond, but Ben beat her to the punch, his newfound curiosity emboldening him. "We're not up to anything, Miss Peabody," he said, his voice steady and respectful. "Grandma was just telling me a story about a secret garden that's supposedly hidden somewhere in the home. We were just having a bit of harmless fun." Miss Peabody's eyes narrowed further, her gaze flickering between Ben and his grandmother. "A secret garden?" she scoffed. "Honestly, Rose, I thought you'd outgrown these childish fantasies by now." Grandma Rose's chin jutted out defiantly. "It's not a fantasy, Agatha.